Thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started to respect everyone's time. Just so everyone knows, we'll be passing around a sign-in sheet to make sure we catch everyone's name. There are some public comment forms over there, as well as brief snapshots for anyone who would like to take one as they go or as we're sitting here. And tonight's meeting is going to be recorded and then broadcast back out to the public. We'll be hopefully sharing it far and wide. So when you do receive the link for the video, if you do, please share. That would be greatly appreciated. So this evening is April 7th, and we're here to discuss the Housing Production Plan. Tonight, I'm going to discuss the Housing Production Plan as defined by Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. This plan is designed to be a proactive strategy for planning and developing of affordable housing. The HPP, which I'm going to call it moving forward, the Housing Production Plan as the HPP, shall follow strict requirements of 760 CMR 56.034. And those requirements spell out what shall be contained within the Housing Production Plan. At minimum, the following requirements or the following elements are required: a comprehensive housing needs assessment, affordable housing goals, and an implementation strategy. And I'll go into all of those in more detail momentarily. And tonight I'm going to discuss really what a housing production plan is, what it is not, how you can find the housing production plan, and how you can comment on it. And that's really the whole point of this evening and for the next month, is really wanting to hear from the public as to the contents of the plan, what we have got right, and what we can do better. So as I mentioned, as part of producing a Massachusetts State Housing Production Plan, there are three specific requirements. One is the comprehensive housing needs assessment, and that's the data. That's the data behind the plan that says, what are the true affordable needs of our community? Second is the goals and strategies. How are we going to meet those needs of our community? What are the goals for the town of Barnstable, and what are the strategies to achieve those goals? And then lastly is the action plan, the implementation plan. How can we truly meet those goals and strategies by using specific projects, programs, incentives, et cetera. So there is a specific review standard. Locally, this plan is brought to the planning board and the town council for review and approval. And then subsequently, if approved by both parties, it goes to the state's Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and they will review, and if you have those three elements of the plan, will approve your plan, and then you can potentially have a certified plan if you begin to meet and achieve those goals that you have outlined in your plan. And those goals also have to be numerically tested, so adding additional affordable units to the community. So to date, this has been a document that's been out there for some time. And again, as I mentioned, really the crux of the matter, the reason we're here tonight is to refresh, to look at our plan, see what we got right, see what we can do better. To date, we've looked at the data. It started with, that predates the 2020 census that came out. 2020 census really came out in 2023. But before that, we're using an American Community Survey, and that has a large margin of error. And so once that new survey, 2020 census data came out, we went back around and updated those stats. In addition, there was a previous survey done, there were focus groups done, and two community workshops. In those workshops and focus groups, some of the key themes that came out, as defined previously, were moderately priced and deed-restricted affordable housing are hard to find. Seasonal workers and seniors are most in need of housing. Wastewater constraints and zoning restrictions are systematic barriers. Public-private partnerships are an opportunity to bring more housing to town and streamline development processes and consider more programmatic approaches. Those are previously what we've heard, but again, we're hoping to hear from you this evening and beyond. Some of the demographics, the data behind the plan, I'll just quickly run through. Demographics, number of households have decreased over the years since our last plan. Total population has increased since our last plan. The proportion of adults over 60 increased dramatically, and so that's, I don't think, a surprise to any. We are an aging community, and so we need to be mindful of that as we're planning for our future. 7 in 10 residents live in a 1 or 2 person household. Much of our household is single family, and much of our homes are home ownership. About a quarter, and this kind of played out as the state developed out their seasonal communities program, about a quarter of our community is defined as seasonal. So, it's not their year-round housing. So we have a little under 25% as seasonal communities, or seasonal housing, excuse me. So we have a seasonality concern, we have an aging concern, and we have an affordability concern. These $799 for a medium price single family home in 2023, and everything just has gone up since that time. Many of our homes are cost burden, so that means 30% of your income that you're taking home or more is being spent directly to your home, so your mortgage or your rent, what have you. And 17% are severely cost burden, so that means you're half or more of what you're bringing home is going right back into your mortgage or rent. So we identified a number of tools that could be used to attack some of these concerns that we outlined here. So these tools are one of the aspects I'm hoping to gain insight on and feedback on. And again, it doesn't have to be here tonight. We'll have, and I'll outline all the ways in which you can comment. So our toolbox. So zoning, there's a lot of discussion on zoning, and that is one tool in the toolbox that a community has. You can implement policy objectives through zoning. You can be very specific about your locations, the percentages of affordability, and the character of new development through zoning. There also can be barriers, depending on how you structure that zoning, but it doesn't have to be a barrier. If you tailor your zoning to a very place-based design, and I think we could achieve that quite nicely in Barnstable. So some of the zoning that has been implemented, so we were ahead of our time with the accessory dwelling units. So in 2021, we allowed by right accessory dwelling units. 44 have been completed, so not a large number, but 44 have been completed, and that's since this past January. And then obviously the Downtown Hyannis zoning initiative was passed, and 169 units are under construction, 346 permitted, 143 in permitting, and that's as of February. So that's a large number of units that have been permitted under that. But I'll go into a little bit more about the affordability aspect of those momentarily. So one of the tools is zoning. The other is subsidies, incentives. And historically, the town of Barnstable has offered these subsidies and incentives. And whether the town wishes to move forward with these types of incentives is something I would certainly be interested in hearing from the community about. So we have Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust. They are specifically in charge of reviewing potential incentives and tax relief for potential market rate units and projects that may offer additional affordable housing through pre-development and current development offerings. We also have a housing development incentive program, and so that is that tax relief that I was referring to, those what we call TIE agreements, tax incentive exemption, so potential exemption on new growth within the very specific area of downtown Hyannis. And we are a housing choice designated community. And that offers a number of grants for our town that could go towards incentivizing new housing. One example of that is Crocker Street here in eastern portion of Hyannis as a housing choice community. We saw a potential development seeking to move forward, was by right, just didn't have adequate sewer. That was an area in which we needed to enhance our sewer area and made sense from a town sewering perspective. So we applied for a grant through the Housing Choice Communities grant program and received that. So we, as a town, received that grant to add sewer in a very specific area. And then that in turn allowed for a small development to be able to connect to sewer there. Another way in which, another tool in the toolbox is municipal land, and this has come up quite often recently. This is one of the town council's priority philosophies, and there's a number of things that could assist potential affordable development through municipal land, and it's spelled out there. Defraying cost of development, contribution that makes project financially feasible, so potentially offering the land for potential development for a very specific cause. Can create affordable housing on the town's terms, can be more responsive to the needs and interests of the community, and address our housing needs in a manner that fits the area's character. And one of those examples I would say that we're having ongoing dialogue on is the Marston's Mills former school site. I think the town to date has been listening to the community and has begun to develop out concepts that are, again, I think addressing each one of these items, a potential offering that would make a project financially feasible, and it can be, if done right and working with leadership, can be more responsive to the needs and interests of the community and can address some housing needs in the area. Some other ones that we're looking at is the Barnstable Adult Community Center. That was a master plan done a little over a year ago now, a small parcel of land next to the Adult Community Center that the town is looking at. And then what we call the House on the Hill, a very small lot on Main Street in Marston's Mills that ultimately Habitat for Humanities was awarded for 2 single-family houses there. So to date, the plan has identified goals and strategies. And again, this is part of the process that we're really interested. What we heard was correct, what we have heard is incorrect, what we would like to update as our conversation evolves. So one of the goals, this is kind of a mandated goal, and I should have started off from the beginning talking about this. The reason we're even talking about a housing production plan is, so under that state law that created Mass General Law 40B, which created that comprehensive permit process that many of you have probably heard of, that says, if a town does not have 10% affordability, then they can be subject to a comprehensive permit, which kind of overrides much of our local zoning and would go simply to the Zoning Board of Appeals for review and approval. So this was back in 1969, they approved this law. And with that, there were some other stipulations that went along with it. And one of them was that each community would identify how they're going to achieve this 10%. And this is kind of where this housing production plan was born. And so one of the requirements of your goals is to tell the state, how are you going to achieve the 10% affordable housing? So 10% of our year-round housing units on subsidized housing, how are you going to meet that? And so we've identified some of the, the stress points, our seniors, our rental ownership. It's really across the board. And so that's a mandated first goal. And so that's in there. How are we going to meet our 10%? And we start out identifying strategies to do so. Right now, we are at 7.15%. This is as of January. 7.15% in our subsidized housing inventory. The planning department gets this each and every month. We request it each and every month. I don't think they provide it each and every month. We request it just to make sure that we are up to date. And currently we're at 7.15% And it sounds like we're not that far from 10%, but in reality, we're actually a fairly large community. So making up that difference between 7.15 and 10% is somewhere around 700 units. So that's a pretty sizable number of units. And remember, those are 700 affordable units, though there are some interesting formula ways you can get around not having all of those affordable, and I can go into that later if interested. Now, some of the goals that we talk about, we summarize them as trying to ensure that new development promotes a high quality of life for the residents and it's consistent with our townwide smart growth policies and protects our natural resources. And what we mean by that is smart growth policy is where you try and define an area of town in which you're looking to incentivize growth and you try and protect those natural resources all around it. So historically, we have our growth incentive zone, which is downtown Hyannis, and we have our resource protection overlay district, which is much of the balance of our community. So really just the western portion of our community. We also seek to assist in stabilizing housing and provide housing assistance programs for the most vulnerable residents, those living in inadequate housing conditions, homeless, or at risk of homelessness. Enhance local capacity to implement these housing initiatives, and partner to promote greater public awareness and understanding of Barnstable's housing crisis through continued research, outreach, public education on our housing needs. So that's how we identify these goals. Again, very interested in your comments. Strategies. We've developed out these strategies in really 3 different buckets. So planning, policy, and zoning strategies, local initiatives and programs, capacity coordination, research, and education. Those words probably sound very familiar. We take those from the goals we just identified just a moment ago. One of them is tax exemptions for year-round housing rentals. So this is a strategy that is potentially available to our community to, again, try and incentivize that year-round housing. We know that there is a gap there that we need to fulfill. And so trying to incentivize that year-round housing. There are opportunities to do so. You can also do so through potential deed restrictions. And there's, again, programs out there, examples across the country, Provincetown, Vail, Lake Tahoe, just to name a few. Another strategy that's identified in the plan is to look at village-scale mixed use and multifamily and identifying that missing middle and living little. So again, if these are planning strategies that you would like to see amended, enhanced, please, I'd love to hear those comments. One thing that personally I think is something we need to really dig into deeply is this one. This is the strengthen our inclusionary ordinance. So I'm not going to push for many strategies, but this one here, I think, is something that the town truly needs to look at. As the person who administers this ordinance, 10% is not enough. You see I just mentioned our 7.15% affordability, and to get to 10%, you're never going to get to 10% if you're only requiring 10%. And so right now, our inclusionary housing ordinance states it is requiring 10% of any new development, that is 10 units or more, to provide that 10% at 65% area median income. So if you have a small development of 10 units, you're required to provide the town with one affordable unit at that 65% area median income. So 65% of the area median income is of Barnstable County as a whole. Now, there can be different requirements for different size projects. There's also can be alternative options for compliance with less process. I know many of the ad hoc committees for the town council have discussed this, and I believe this is a priority for that they've identified as well. And so certainly would be happy to work on that moving forward. Another strategy that is identified here is targeting underutilized properties. So targeting underutilized properties with proper infrastructure in place is a way you can certainly not only find investment where investment hasn't been historically, but also an opportunity to potentially create some additional affordable housing units. Looking at our short-term rental policy. So short-term rentals, we have since identified the number of short-term rentals in our community and have slowly begun to identify what those impacts have created. But as we've identified early, certainly a need for additional year-round housing in our community. So this could be certainly a strategy that we look at to define what our policy is moving forward. As I already mentioned, underutilized municipal properties is a good way to develop out affordable housing units while not compromising or having concerns over character of our community. So we have direct assistance in housing rehab. So this is, we do this in a couple different ways. So we have our Community Development Block Grant Fund that assists to public services. We also have our Affordable Housing Trust Fund that can assist in many ways towards that this goal and program. But we can certainly do better. We don't really have rental assistance at this time. We don't have a rehab program at this time. So those are things that could be eligible through an Affordable Housing Trust and potentially through our Community Preservation Committee. So that's certainly a program we could look at. Another one is developing out better capacity and coordination. One of the ways in which you can do that is through regionalizing certain efforts. One of the programs that are currently under review is a Regional Housing Services Office. And so as I mentioned before, we have our subsidized housing inventory. Each of these affordables are to be monitored. And one great way for effective and efficient ways to monitor each and every one of those affordable units across the Cape is to regionalize those services. And so that's just one simple example of administrative burdens that, sometimes our state government may offer you may offer us required standards that we must meet. And as communities, there are out-of-the-box ways in which we can achieve those standards, and regionalization of certain administrative tasks is one of those. And this Regional Housing Services Office could certainly do that in a cost-effective and efficient way. Next is to promote and coordinate and partner with other stakeholders to develop out research and educational opportunities and programs. We can retain and develop staff and expand our local capacity. And lastly, just continuing our funding sources, though seeking different ways to diversify our funding. Right now, much of it comes through our CPC, our CPA funds that goes directly into our Affordable Housing Trust. And so we could look at different ways to establish more consistent and diverse approaches to funding. So one of the big things here now is telling you where the housing production plan lives. So truly interested in all of your comments. And the easiest and best way to get a copy of our housing production plan is right on our town website. So this is just the front cover of our town website. And you go to Town of Barnstable, right on the left side, we got a big tab that says housing. And under housing, we have the housing production plan. And you click on that. And not only is it going to provide the plan for you, but it's also going to have a tool that you can insert any comment you wish back to us, and it goes to myself and Kate Maldonado, our senior planner. And we will be bringing all those comments forward to the planning board and town council, as well as a future redlined draft housing production plan for consideration. So that brings me to what our process and next steps. Originally, we drafted press release, excuse me, and did early public comment. We have since gone to the Housing Committee with this draft plan that is before you in 2024. We follow that up with the Planning Board with a few meetings from June through October. We presented this at Town Council on February 27th, 2025. Town Council requested additional public comment and review of the draft plan. We are doing so this month. Public comment is open through May 1st of this month, till the next month. And we'll be taking all that public comment in, reviewing, offering a red line version back to the Planning Board and Town Council. So there's many ways in which you can provide public comment. Again, on the town website, as I just mentioned, under housing production plan update. There's also handouts here. You don't need to put it in a nice orderly fashion though. I'm available through email. Come to town hall. Send me a letter. My email address is james.kupfer, Kupfer, at town.barnstable.ma.us. I welcome your emails. Feel free to send a letter, come by town hall, give me a call. I would love to get as much public feedback as possible so we can provide a robust draft plan back to our leadership. And with that, I will open up for any questions or comments. We do have the mic up front here, and I believe, so it's all being recorded, so if you don't mind, for your comments, if you could come up to the mic, I greatly appreciate it, and thank you.
Knows how to turn this on. John Crow, Town Councilor, Precinct 5. I first want to thank Jim Kupfer for the presentation. I really appreciate it, and it's a well-done synopsis. And I liked what you put together because it's exactly on the pages of the housing production plan that I have in front of me, which is basically pages 14 through, say, 17. There's a lot in here that is good, that I think a lot of us will support. Things like develop strategies that will address seasonal housing challenges unique to the region, strengthening inclusionary affordable housing ordinance requirements. Seek opportunities to increase the number of affordable units in future privately developed projects. Explore community-supported opportunities to add housing on town properties. Seek to establish a housing rehabilitation program to help low-income homeowners preserve their existing housing. Continue to seek ways to defray costs related to pre-development, either through utilizing affordable housing growth and development trust funds or examine water and sewer connection costs to foster creation of more affordable units. Partner with neighboring communities to create regional housing services office. As long as that's a administrative office, that would be just fine. Recruit, develop, and sustain dedicated and experienced town staff to coordinate town's housing efforts and entities. And I think that can probably be done through that regional staff, so we don't have to have higher staff cost here. But a number of these, there's 4 or 5 that I think are non-starters from the beginning, and I want to go through those. First is to pursue the extension of Barnstable residential property tax exemption to Barnstable property owners to provide year-round rentals to income-eligible residents. I think that can be done by the other thing that I didn't mention here, which is important, is short-term rental regulations that we've been asking for a number of years. I think that would negate the importance of us spending money versus making regulations that would prevent those properties first going off the market and not being available. The other is support village-scale mixed-use and multi-development and redevelopment consistent with local comprehensive plan, which would change the size and scale of developments in our villages, change the height restrictions, allow some development that I think would be mixed developments and multi-units. It would just not be something that our village and a number of villages would be interested in doing. As I think it would change the character significantly of those villages. The other is identifying zoning amendments and other strategies to support the missing middle and living little forms of housing, such as allowing single-family home conversions, duplexes, cottage clusters, townhouse, tiny homes, and infill design consistent with local identified suitable local comprehensive plan. That is another issue that I think that would change the character of many of our villages and would just not be a popular thing. One other thing is that that I saw here that probably wouldn't be a good thing to keep on this would be me see here for a minute. Support the Barnstable Affordable Housing Trust by continue to provide funding through the Community Preservation Act, home CBGB funds. And this is the sentence that's important, and by seeking state authorization for real estate transfer fee and building permit surcharge to create additional funding programs. At this point, with the markets the way they are, with the possibility we're going to have 2.5 overrides in the future for sewer expansion, I think asking people to have that have houses over a certain price level, let's just say that's $1 million. That includes quite a large segment of this population because of the housing increases in prices, and I think that will be a detriment to going forward, considering the cost of electricity we've had recently, and other costs that I think would put a definitely crimp on people's ability to pay some of these extra fees. I think that one is an important one. The ones I've mentioned here just now, I have also come to the conclusion that as we've seen these put on, I think they were put on mainly by a previous staff that no longer is here, and many of those have no basis in public opinion. And those include the mixed use and multi-development and zoning amendments to increase those heights restrictions in villages. And I think that's something that was clear on your the survey you did earlier last year, and that was I think the main thing that people wanted more of by 74% was single-family housing. So those are my critiques of this, some of these proposals. There's many here. There's about 30. I think the majority of those we can work with. I say some of the other ones I've mentioned are something that will be very difficult to get past and through. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My first fail. Hi there. I'm Heather Hunt. Nice to see you. And I want to compliment you on the clarity and sort of coherency of your presentations. I think it's appreciated by those of us who don't know a lot and try to listen as we go. So thank you for that on behalf of, I think, a lot of people. I also want to commend the council for asking you to take another look at the housing plan and to make sure it's based on current data. And then also, really importantly, to make sure that it's designed specifically to focus on the objective of meeting, an actual plan to meet the actual affordability goal. When those of us, and I'm going to say who don't know a lot about housing, so I don't want to sort of pretend that I do, when we read the initial plan, it felt a little kitchen sinky, I think, as opposed to a very targeted plan to achieve outcomes. I had sent in comments last April, and I'm sure I'm still in wild agreement with myself, so I'm going to just refer you to those if you could take another look, but I just wanted to hit a few things that I've thought about in the meantime. I want to echo what was just said about the idea of paying people not to short-term rent as opposed to doing what communities across the country and across the world have done to prioritize locals in housing. There are dozens and dozens of ways that hundreds and hundreds of thriving tourist communities have balanced the need for local housing, to prioritize locals in our housing, and to sort of sustain the tourism that has come about by our Cape family rental tradition. So I would strongly encourage the council and the town for the first time to do sort of a broad assessment of mechanisms across the country and the world to return our housing stock to our local residents. I do note that the proposal to pay people, I had been curious about that because I take myself as a person that kind of follows everything to do with short-term rentals, and I had never heard that. I had never heard it in the survey. I read the survey results, and I never heard it in the focus group. When you dig into it, it actually came from a chamber in an email to a consultant that said sort of, hey, try this. That was a chamber that opposed sort of mainstream short-term rental regulations. And then all of a sudden, there it is in a plan. I think it has no place in the plan because it has no basis in our community. Sticking with that notion that the plan should echo things that are supported by the community, I would urge you to take on that same sort of screen that was used by the Ad Hoc Housing Committee, and that was, let's identify achievable things that would have support by the community so that we can execute them and get the affordable housing that we actually need. So to that end, I would also toss two other elements of the current plan, and those exist, they're items number 3 and 4 on page 15. And I'll use plain words instead of some of the more obtuse words in the plan. And one of those is to undo single-family zoning, and the other is to change our village centers. I think those were sort of lifted from the Cape Cod Commission and say on the single-family zoning matter, they have every evidence of being sort of personal preferences by some former staff and also personal preference of the former, I don't know if it's former or current housing plan consultant who stood here and said Barnstable should be like California and rethink single-family zoning. The people of Barnstable haven't expressed an interest to be California, and I think we should follow the people of Barnstable's lead who have expressed an interest in maintaining that. Importantly, I think those two elements that I would strike, the getting rid of single-family zoning and sort of densifying our village centers, aren't a way to actually achieve the objectives. At least if we look at the kind of dense development that's happened in Hyannis and then look in the newspaper or whatever you look at today online to look at the rental prices, right? That hasn't actually delivered the pricing that the people who really most need the help can afford. I think my last point is simply going to be I also appreciated the council waiting and encouraging you to look at the Ad Hoc Housing Committee's recommendations. I tried to watch as many of those meetings as I could. They were long and sort of sometimes wandering, but they landed in a place with really diverse membership on that committee of identifying a good number of, I think, practical, achievable ways to actually increase affordable housing. I think that should almost be your starting point as opposed to some of the things that emerged in the prior plan. And I think that's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Schulte?
Good evening. Bob Schulte from Centerville. I didn't expect to speak tonight, Jim, but I think as most of the people in the room know, and anybody who may watch the video, I've had the pleasure of working with Jim as part of the committee to review zoning and regulatory agreements, one of the ad hoc committees. And I'm not going to touch on some of the things that have already been spoken about, but I hate the use of trendy jargon and things, but I think one of the comments you made, and these are recommendations that I think our committee's made largely through a lot of the work and help you provide us with, Jim. But I think it's important that the town really lean in on that inclusionary ordinance. I think it's been talked about by the ad hoc housing. As you said, the 10%, is not going to get us anywhere. I think one of the concerns the public has is that in these big developments being built, if we're only going to get 10%, we got to build 300 units to get 30. I don't think anybody disagrees with the fact that we need more affordable housing. I think we need to be looking at things like other communities where Lexington increased their inclusionary requirement to 15%. You have P-Town requiring one affordable for every 6 units that are being built, so they can get 16.67%. There's been a couple of other developments that we've talked about in the affordable, in our committee, the ad hoc. You had the Cloverleaf development, which is up in P-Town. Now that's a unique situation where the town contributed the land, so it made the development more financially feasible for the developer, but they were able to get a much higher percentage of affordable units out of that. There was another one that was just announced, I think, going for approval up in P-Town. I want to say it's 38%. It's not, I don't believe it was town land provided by the town, but you have a developer, I think it's New Boston Ventures up in Boston, that is building that, and they're going to be able to build. It's not on the main street, it's in one of the more industrial areas, but a much higher percentage. So another thing I think the town really needs to be thinking about is aggressively seeking some of these developers that will be willing to build developments that have higher percentages. I think, like, again, nobody's arguing about the fact we need affordable, but the problem is if you keep building these big developments, one, it changes the character of the Cape, and it puts undue stress on our infrastructure, which then leads other costs we have to do, stormwater management, sewer, and things like that. I just think those are the things that we need to be looking at to increase the affordable rather than just building more housing. And I know we've talked about it, Jim, in some of our meetings. We're already hearing anecdotally from some of these developers that they themselves are concerned that with all the units that are being permitted, that before we know it, we could find ourselves with a glut of market rate housing, and we're still going to have a shortage of affordable housing. So those are things I think need to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Betty Ledke, Town Councilor from Precinct 3. Again, a really nice presentation, Jim. And what I think, especially what Bob Schulte just said, he used the word unique. I think we have to be unique because the approach we've been taking is not working. Let's do an assumption that the new Hanover, I mean, most people know where Hanover is, out behind BJ's. Let's say it has 250 units, something close to that. Okay, we need 28 Hanovers to get to 7,000 to get us our 700. We're not going to build 28 Hanovers. So the thought that we keep doing the same thing really is the definition of insanity and thinking we're going to get a different result. And Bob made a good point. Again, if we keep encouraging the developers to do the 10% or we beg to get the 13, we're not going to get where we need to be. And we have so many constraints here. We have constraints on land. We've all heard the 14% of land is available for development. And then we have the massive constraint of our sewer and our nitrogen problem. So anything new just really needs to be on a sewer, but yet the only sewers are here. And I mean, we just go around and around on this loop, and we never get anywhere. So we really need to dig into this, and I'll provide some more detailed comments. But we need to also take advantage of some of the unique programs. The town of Barnstable is a, what is it? I'm forgetting what it is. We're a something community.
A housing choice community?
No, not housing choice. What's the other one that lets us do the Commonwealth Builders? Gateway.
Oh,
We're a gateway city. Okay, so we're really lucky that we have some of these designations because the gateway city allows us to do Commonwealth Builders and some other things. We have unique positions that we can take advantage of. So I think this plan, and Heather Hunt used kitchen sink, it's just everything's in there. But that makes it just, it's a bunch of fog you're trying to see through. I think we need to be very precise in this and really hit it. And also admit at a certain level that we're never going to get there. We're never going to get to 700 units. I don't see how that happens. And ironically, with what you said, it protects us from the comprehensive permits. We don't want to be protected from them because they're the ones that do 25% affordability. That's who we want. But we want them in a friendly way. So it's really, it's incredibly complicated, and we need to really roll up our sleeves and admit that it's complicated and get into some hard numbers. And, you know, we're not a seasonal community, but yet we're pretty darn seasonal here. We have plenty of houses, but nobody's living in them year-round. And it's kind of unfair that we have to count against all these houses that are seasonal houses. So we just have so many conundrums here to wind our way through that, and I was on the ad hoc housing. I did think we did come up with some stuff that's going to take some hard work to do, the inclusionary zoning. So that's it. So you mentioned some of the things there, but, you know, gateway cities, that's another one, and the block grants and, you know, maybe a more vigorous use of our CPA. The other night at the town council, we talked about the accessory affordable units, the relationship to ADUs. Maybe we should incentivize people to make their ADUs affordable. I mean, there's so many little things that we can do that will do more than these giant things that we're doing. So that's what I would encourage. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bloom?
Charlie Bloom, Hyannis. Jim, I want to support you in your comments about the inclusionary ratio. And as Betty said, 700 units means somewhere in the town of Barnstable we have to build 7,000 units, and that is alarming. I can't see where we would put them all. I know that there are formulas. For instance, the TD Bank, the entire project is falling under the affordable mantle, and that's great. That's a nice trick to get us there, but it doesn't mean that affordable housing is actually being created. They have a pretty decent affordable sort of thing going there, and that's greatly appreciated. But I don't see many people nowadays wanting to do more than 10%, only because of the financial aspect of it. So we've got to get together and get that inclusionary ratio up, and we have to start thinking about brand new ways of getting housing done. The what was it, 1960 something or other that 40 came into? It hasn't worked.
Excellent, thank you. Any additional comments?
Seeing no other right now, Jim, John Crow. I just want to make another point that I forgot to make. The governor had a study out within the last year talking about which regions of the state need what percentages of housing to meet their goals. And when it came down to the Cape, it was 2.5% or less, which is not a huge amount compared to other places. This is the Cape and the islands. And one of the stipulations it said there was we just don't use our housing correctly. We've got, and I think that goes back to a lot with short-term rentals. And I think if, just doing a little bit of math, okay, we were at 7.15% now, and when your handout said we're between 2 and 3.4% with affordables right now on an average basis. Well, if you add 7.15 and 3.4, you get 10.45. So we'd be over that limit. I'm not saying that all units would go, but I think that's an important thing that we can do without actually building anything. Okay, so I think that's something we should concentrate on is the short-term rentals and regulating them so that most of those units or a large percentage of those units go back to being year-round for the tenants. And I think that would be a big dent in what we're trying to do without having a large cost at this point. And there'll be some that says, well, we make a certain amount of tax revenue off short-term rentals, but at the same time, if we're going the other way and we're going to incentivize by giving them tax exemptions on their properties that they rent, so we're losing out on our tax base. So it's, I think it's sort of a wash in that respect because we're spending a lot of time and money on trying to get more affordable units when we can actually do something that would bring a lot more back into the fold in a short time. So just want to mention that. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you.
Joe Taconia from Marston's Mills. I have a numbers question. If tomorrow morning you could snap your fingers and come up with 700 affordable units and hit your number, where would that stand in terms of the overall housing needs? Are we shooting at the right target here? Is it 10% or is it, how many units do we need?
So that's an excellent question. And I point back, unfortunately, to the plan itself. The plan says, the state law says we'd have to have 10%. Is that the number we need? I don't believe so. I believe actually that number is going to be higher than that, but in many different tiers. And what we identify in the needs assessment is maybe it's not 10% of our community at 80% area median income, but we have a variety of needs here. We have folks aging in place that just need some help staying in place. We have, I think almost everybody here probably knows someone that's at risk of losing their housing, especially during the peak season. We obviously, there are a population that is without housing that are in need. And so there's a dramatic tier. And then there's obviously our workforce housing that isn't likely in the 80%. It's actually probably much higher than 80%, which for the state is irrelevant. Anything above 80% area median income doesn't go on this subsidized housing inventory, doesn't get counted towards our 10%, but is a need, a real need for our community. And so that wouldn't very likely fall within our housing production plan, but certainly will be touched and has been touched with our local comprehensive plan. So that's our big picture, what is truly our housing needs for our community, not what is our affordable housing needs as defined by the state. So it is a very complicated kind of web we're working with here, but I understand your question absolutely. Is 10% the goal we're trying to meet? In terms of meeting our housing needs, I would say no, it is not. Anybody else? Seeing none. Well, I just want to give one more plug that this plan is on the town's website for the next month through May 1st. We have a comment tool. You're welcome to use that tool. That tool gets sent right to Kay Maldonado and myself, but also feel free to shoot me an email. Come on by. Let's talk about the plan. The more the merrier. We really want to get your feedback. So with that, thank you so much. And we have a meeting Thursday night again if anybody wants round two. All right. Thank you all.